30 minutes sleep before the first time I presented a test match on national television. I was kind of really inspired to want to work on cricket by watching the girls win in 2017. That was such an incredible moment. And it was the teacher who said, oh no, they'll laugh at us if we turn up with a girl. And I was like, I'm only, 9 or 10 at this point, and but anything that I've come across that could go wrong, I know how to manage it as an anchor. I've also done broadcasts where the whole thing has gone down, and so the only way I've had contact with the gallery and with the live is my floor manager holding up her notepad that says, break in 3, whatever, which is quite difficult to figure out.
Well, Kate Mason, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. So let's go back to the very start, growing up for you. What was sport always a major passion for you?
It is. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've just noticed that you've got Alastair Cook just looming over your shoulder. Can you see him from my image of you? He's just one eyeball on your always watching it.
Well, that's not
I
quite
like that.
as not quite as extended as Nessa Sain's bookcase on the Sky Cricket podcast, but I'm getting there.
I love it. It's a great backdrop. Yeah, sport was always just really like a key part of my life. I mean, I was brought up an only child, so I used to have to kind of drag people into having a hit or a kickabout with me. But my parents were both quite sporty. My dad was like good at all sorts of things. My mum was she's like a good racket sports player. So they were both quite actually, my mum, she wouldn't be someone who'd like go out for a jog, but she was someone who liked playing sport with other people. Whereas my dad was more like really super committed to like going out on his runs, and he'd be pleased for me to tell you that he was what's on the cover of Runner's World because he was like competing in some sort of a competition in Northamptonshire where I grew up. So yeah, it was always just like part of life really, and sport was always on in the house as well, which I mean, it can go different ways, but I think for me, that kind of bred the sense that it was all part of a bigger ecosystem. But yeah, kind of hitting things was definitely as in with a bat or a racket or something along those lines was always the one that I was sort of best at. And I used to there was like a tree in the garden that I would try and like hit against, which didn't really work because obviously bark is wonky. It's not really, but I think it probably improved my reaction speed and that sort of thing. You'd probably pay a lot of money actually, wouldn't you, to have something that delivers variable bounce just in front of you. But I had this tree in my garden that we used to use. So yeah, it was always a huge part of my life, just running around like a little crazy kid. And I suppose this is the genesis of my interest in getting into sports broadcasting, and trying to make it a space that was friendly to kids like me and to girls and to people who maybe weren't like represented on the telly too much, because I had lots of experiences of wanting to play in football teams, wanting to play in cricket teams, and not being allowed to and not having access to that. So yeah, I've played a lot of sport and I really enjoyed it, and I got access to various things, but there were spaces that I couldn't go, and I remember finding that quite strange even when I was just 8 or 9.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms of, you know, focusing on cricket, what were your early cricket memories, whether it was playing, as you mentioned, albeit restricted, which is obviously a shame, disgrace, whatever you want to describe it. Watching games on TV or listening to TMS or whatever. What were your sort of early memories of cricket growing up?
Yeah, I think key memories from that the thing about that lots of people say about cricket, and I think lots of people who grew up in cricket fan households, is that tone, that voice just in the background all the time, the kind of TMS on the radio or just, the telly on downstairs. You're not necessarily like taking a massive interest in it straight away, but it's just the kind of the color and the tone of your background to your childhood. So I think that's a fairly I'm not sure I could even tell you what the earliest kind of cricket I can remember specifically hearing. But of course, I mean, I was much older when the '05 Ashes was going on. That was something um, that really obviously struck a chord with almost everybody who's ever watched cricket. And I think I was kind of really inspired to want to work on cricket in by watching the girls win in 2017. That was such an incredible moment for the game and for people like me taking an interest in the sport. So it's a funny one with specific kind of sports memories because I'm not somebody who could tell you like, there's some people, I don't know if you're one of them, Bill, but like there's some people who can like, as you know, I'm a Tottenham fan, and I could tell you all sorts of things about players that I love and this and that, and the same with cricket. But I'm not one of those people who can be like, do you remember that goal? And it was scored, from the heart, and listing out all the players who scored this and that. So that's not the way my mind works. It's more a kind of like narrative build up in the background is for my love of sport. And I guess lots of cricket fans would say this as well, that the sort of the tone of the English summer and how that all fits together. So yeah, I didn't go. I tell you what I did do. We didn't go to like county cricket or anything when I was little. Northamptonshire would have been my ground, but I was lucky enough when I was little, to live abroad, and for a period of time living in some places that are going to sound very nice, but unfortunately, I'm sort of 6 or 7 at this point, so I didn't really notice all too much. But places in and around the West Indies. So I was able to go to various cricket. I think I remember going to cricket grounds rather than actually to going to watch cricket games. But we sort of would wander around there, and I've got a West Indies cap from, I don't know, God, I'm not even sure how old I would have been when we were doing this, but maybe 98, something like that. And I certainly knew a lot about. I had a Brian Lara cricket bat as well that I used to think was my most treasured possession. So, yeah, interestingly, a lot of my kind of cricket, what would you call them? My cricket pastoral memories would be kind of knowing about the West Indies rather than necessarily knowing about England, which is pretty flash, I guess.
Yeah, no, of course. Well, when you said Brian Lara, I thought you were going to mention Brian Lara cricket for a minute. That was absolutely
And
brilliant.
no, yeah, I know,
Absolutely
amazing
brilliant
thing.
game growing up. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was awesome. On the old PS1, that's a throwback. So I've read an article we did online with Mark Gordon the other
Yeah,
year,
well,
and saying about you playing cricket as a youngster, and how difficult that was, and reading like the opposition captain, not a captain, the coach saying they would you'd resign if he would have resigned if
oh yeah.
if you got another wicket, because you got 2 wickets and 2 balls. So how I know it must be difficult to sort of bring up those memories, but it is sadly is important for education, and trying to raise awareness of how sexism has been rife, and well, unfortunately still is, which we'll talk about later. But how difficult was that at such a young age to go through something like that?
Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, it's just a bummer to be honest. Like I just think about it now and I just feel yeah, you're right. It just does make me feel a bit kind of like sad about how many people, because I was, as I said to you, I was a pretty sporty kid. I was keen to take part in pretty much anything. I could catch, I could throw. Like I wasn't, um, lagging behind in terms of the boys who were in my year. And frankly, until you're, I don't know, 11, everyone all looks the same anyway. So I always find it quite weird that you would want to separate that out. But I don't know if that's still happening in schools. I hope it's not. I play now sometimes, very rarely, unfortunately, because I'm away a lot with work, as you know. But there's a cricket team in kind of North London that I sometimes play in, and it's everything from like 11-year-olds all the way up to 55-year-olds sometimes in the same team, depending on what's going on. And you can really see the difference from the young girls and the fact that they've been like taught to play cricket and taught how to throw and catch and all these other things. And it's basically like a curve all the way up to. I mean, there's some really good older women. I'm not saying you can't be good at cricket if you're older, obviously, but you can really see where the kind of education has started to develop around cricket. But yeah, it was just a real bummer that that day, because it's such a clear memory as you reference, because it was an intimidating thing to go and do as the only girl. And I was happy to get stuck in. I was always wanting to try new things, but you turn up to a space where everyone else is, you realize you're different, and then I suppose I just sort of thought no one would point it out, and instead the opposite happened, which was actually, and there's another experience. I may have talked about this before, but one of the guys at my school, when I was maybe 10, 9 or 10, we had the school had a cricket team, a boys' cricket team, and they're going away on a game. And I think the wicketkeeper was sick or had to pull out for some reason. And one of the boys said to our teacher, oh, Kate, because we'd like had a hit around in the playground, like, oh, Kate actually is quite a good keeper. Why do we take her? And it was the teacher who said, oh no, they'll laugh at us if we turn up with a girl. And I was like, I'm only, 9 or 10 at this point. And as I said to you before, we all just kind of look the same. I definitely had as good hand-eye coordination as any of these other kids. Um, so yeah, it's hard to know how to deal with that when you're a young kid, because you just sort of tend to go along with whatever it is the adults think, right? And they're in charge, and okay, they think that's not right. Fine, whatever. But even then, I thought, oh, well, this is a bit crap, because I thought this might be something I'd be quite into. Um, and it's, yeah, like I said to you at the beginning, it's something that so many girls and and boys, there's that whole thing about like people getting written off as being not clever or not whatever, not athletic, all of these things. Number of people, this is an extreme example, but number of people, journalists who went and watched Harry Kane when he was like in the junior England divisions, and thought he was not going to be all that. This is obviously an extreme and quite dramatic example, but of course, he's could be England's greatest ever player at this rate, depending on what happens. So I always think it's a shame to write off anybody at any age, and especially for things that they can't control, like the fact that they're female or of color or shorter. And I guess that's why I'm really into things like Moneyball and all that other stuff, where people use those things to their advantage.
Yeah, no, no, completely. Thanks for sharing that. And we'll touch on it later on, but reading the ICEC report that was released by the ECB 3 years ago, it's frightening reading what discrimination that people are going through, even in the 21st
Mm.
century. It's a disgrace, really. But we'll chat on that a little bit later. So I assume, Kate, unfortunately, those terrible experiences would have put you off playing anymore.
Yeah, I just didn't really have access to it. I wasn't, I imagine if I'd been like instantly brilliant, someone might have said, oh, actually, can we please get her back? But obviously, you're not when you're a kid, are you? I mean, with some obvious exceptions. So yeah, I just didn't really find a place to play. And like I said, I have subsequently gone and played in North London, and I've found real like joy from that. And it actually makes me quite emotional seeing like some of the people who have now access to this amazing sport. But in terms of other stuff I could do, with the hand-eye coordination that I had, I ended up playing squash, which there were just some courts like quite near where I lived, and you could kind of actually go and just like hit, not to sound like a sad only child loser person, but yeah, you could go and like have a hit on your own. And so I would do that. And yeah, ended up playing kind of county level and training properly and sort of learning about what you needed to do to be a good athlete. And I think, mentally, I was never tough enough to be the kind of person who would just, take it away from the opponent when things got tough. I was always the sort of person who, frankly, would just like crumple if things got a bit too difficult. But I really loved competing, and I got to play in some great. I went to Cambridge University. I got to play in the varsity match. I got to captain us to the final of the like student championships, and in fact, in the year I was captain, we finished third in the country, which was pretty cool, given that we were just like a normal bunch of people who learned, who were just students and playing, and the other two teams, the ones who came first and second, they had massive ringers. Like the number one for the team that won this competition was the world number one, like of squash, not just of student. It's like you guys
Talk
really
about
did
luck of the
not.
draw in a bad way.
You really did not need to bloody like this is the sort of sledgehammer to crack a nut situation here. But yeah, I was very lucky to play in this great team at university and get the chance to train. And I went back there actually on the subject of kind of spaces getting opened up for sport for women in sport. I went back to Cambridge to do a talk in the week last week, and they've put up previously only the men who'd represented the university at squash had their names on the wall, and now in 2025 we've now got some boards with the women. So yeah, real Kate Mason ultras can go to, to Cambridge University
Oh,
and
that's
look
cool. I
on their
bet. Well, I
boards.
mean, should have been up there anyway, but better late than never, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. It was cool to see.
No, I bet. Okay. Well, before we get into your career as a journalist, you mentioned the '05 Ashes there.
Oh, yeah.
How important was that in your cricket? Love really, because I can speak for myself and a load of mates, friends, of similar age, and that was obviously an iconic series, probably the best Test series ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just had everything. So even just and plus it was the last ever Test series on Channel 4 up until a few years ago. But in terms of
Yeah.
prime English summer, with Richie Benno and
Oh
um,
my God, that guy.
obviously Mark Nicholas, and obviously the pro as a presenter, and just the Shane Warne, God rest his soul, and yeah, just Kevin Peterson did 158 at the Oval. Just just an unbelievable series, really. But yeah, how key was that in your sort of cricket journey as such?
I think that major sports events are always the thing that really capture like people's imagination because it's that special thing of this is why like broadcasters still want to buy sports rights and still invest in it when there's hardly anything else that's like appointment to view TV, right? And of course the wonderful thing about major events like the Ashes generally, but like an Ashes series that was that fucking good, is that they mean that you can talk about it with absolutely everyone because the interest builds and people are gradually, even if people weren't initially um totally obsessed by it, by the end, you couldn't help by being caught up in the drama of the whole affair. And to your point as well about that, I saw a graphic or I maybe retweeted it of someone like showing how the Ashes had gone over the years, and it was quite notable, of course, how it was just a complete flood of yellow right up until that 2005. So, but there was a lot of talk that goes into these kind of major events, and of course, with England having had no success in the Ashes in the run up for many, many years before this 2005 one, there wasn't. I mean, there's always the hope, right? But there wasn't this sense that like this. Honestly, it was like this could be significant for the whole concept of the competition. If you go for so long without it being competitive, it can like I know we think that these things can't lose meaning because they've had so much history and they're so impactful to so many people over so many generations. But the reality is like they can lose meaning. Like if it is that it doesn't exist as a competition, then over time, if that keeps happening, that's really bloody significant. So I think I don't be like 2005 was significant for all of cricket, and we wouldn't be here now if England hadn't won that one. But I don't know. I think there's something in that, and it was just amazing to live through and to have a chance to see um, England be good.
Yeah, no, it was no incredible, and you're right about like the sporting events. We had Europe win the Ryder Cup recently over in the US, and
Exactly.
you need a you need that jeopardy in sporting events, which sometimes they isn't quite there. You sort of know what's going to happen before it even starts. So that's not what it's about, is it? Um, so in terms of obviously you said you played squash for a period of time, played at university, but when did the sort of the journalism thing come around? Was that something that was always in the background you thought about getting into, or how did that all come about?
it was hard to know what to do um with the like at the start of your career. It was hard to know like what the significance, like how important is it to get a degree even? Like what are we doing next? And in fact some of the students I was talking to this last week were there's a difficult job market. People are worried about how they're going to get a job, like what is coming next. And I think I was quite not blasé exactly, but I don't think, a lot of my friends were doing like constant internships at like banks and like scary massive organizations the whole time. And I mainly was just like writing match reports, and I had a terrible radio show on at the university on the student radio that we had this really cool, I mean it was quite broken down, but like I thought really amazing studio in the university that you could go and play around in on your own basically. So I love doing that sort of stuff. um and I think I just hoped that there would be a way into specifically broadcasting rather than necessarily like written journalism. That was my aim, because I think I don't know. It just all of these we talk about talking about the Ashes already, and it hadn't happened when I was at university, but London 2012 then happened and was such a like moment in time, and made London such an incredible place for this amazing summer where people were like talking to each other on the tube and all this other stuff. So I'd really started to see how these sporting events could make the world better. At risk of sounding too kind of happy clappy about it, but I really think they can. Um, and so I wanted to be a part of that. And I think so. I left university before London 2012, and my main aim was just like I'd done a lot of this journalism or this bit of writing for the student newspaper, bit of like internshipsy stuff, trying to get stuff into the, I don't know why in particular, but just trying to get into the stuff into the Metro, or like I was quite excited about the idea of getting published in places. But I knew I needed to like earn money and ideally get to move to London. Like that's not where I was from, as you know. And so I just tried to find a job that would pay me money that I could then, in my spare time, I could see if I could get into this space. Because the fact is, like, well, a few people get the chance. Generally, if they're like the offspring of like famous footballers or cricketers or whatever, get the chance to just crack on and be on TV straight away. But mainly people aren't going to be like, oh, please, Kate, come and present our sports program. We'd love to see you. We don't know who you are, but give it a go. So yes, I had to find a way to kind of fund the next step into broadcasting, and yeah, I just got this job in London, interviewed for a load of places, wasn't really like, you know, told them that I was very excited about the job, obviously, but wasn't particularly fussed about it. And then, but was very lucky to get a sort of stable income. And then around the sides of that, looked for internships at the BBC, looked for little bits and pieces where I could write things or make match reports or do that sort of stuff. So it was very much like a patchwork approach to trying to get into the space. And it was tough, to be honest, because I was working like the intent when I had this internship at the BBC, it was like 2 days a week for a few months. um and so 2 days a week plus a 5 days a week job is obviously 7 days a week. And I was also like sneaking around trying to get more time into to work on my broadcasting. Did a bit of travel news. That was quite fun. That teaches you how to talk about stuff, even if you don't have a clue what is going on. Because at that point, I don't think I could even drive, so I wasn't clear on things like that. So yeah, it was it was a lot of fun and a lot of work. And I think I did always have the sort of shining light of like seeing Claire Balding at London 2012 and how she communicated everything and made it seem just really made the stories resonate with people. I just thought that was really worth trying to get to.
Yeah, no, 100%. And just it always fascinates me with you know, broadcast journalists getting into TV because I've always wondered how do you actually get into TV because it's it's easier as such with we had Nick Holt on recently from the Telegraph and he had the more traditional route, local newspapers, worked and then covered well, he covered Northamptonshire for 3 seasons, and then
Mm.
end up a few other places, then end up at the Telegraph. He's been there for a number of years now. Whereas yours and a lot of people working TV is slightly different. So like, how do you like get into TV without do you have to do like a show reel things like that? How do you practice without getting somewhere straight away?
Such,
It's
yeah,
it's a difficult one.
it's such a great question because yeah, you're absolutely right. That is exactly the challenge of it. It's like what how I had this conviction that I could be quite good at this, but obviously you don't know what's around it. And quite often people, you know, people shout at you on the internet and say, "Oh, you know, wow, you I could do this. This looks so easy." But there's a whole load of stuff that you don't realize is a core part of the job and why it's like a kind of vocational skill. um Things like dealing with all the people speaking to you in the background in your ear and trying to with like all the changes that are constantly happening and like managing advert breaks and all this other sort of stuff we can go into if it's of interest. But initially I think the main thing to be able to show is exactly what you said, is that you can speak okay and not be too terrified when someone puts a camera in front of you. And the fact is you are terrified because it's not even not now, but like for many years at the beginning, you look into a camera, one of these big, I don't know if you've ever been on the end of one of these like big broadcast cameras at all.
No, I haven't, but I've seen them, behind the scenes and stuff.
Yeah,
For top
they're
TV
massive.
studios. Oh, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
they're not exactly a mobile phone, are they?
yeah, exactly. They're massive, and then it's just this big like black hole that you're staring into, and it's not like talking to a person because when you're talking to somebody or a group of people, there's visual cues. You can kind of I don't know. There's something a lot more natural about talking to somebody else's face and trying to figure out what you're saying. So quite often, yeah, it's just like speaking to the void. Um, but I think initially, yes, I tried to demonstrate that I could have expertise in the area. That was the point of the writing. I then got on this. It was the internship at the BBC was actually a specific radio um, internship, so that was helpful for again learning to talk. And then I think I would try and film like when I was writing stuff, I would try and film little really crap like little video reports of what was going on to try and build up like enough content that I could potentially, that was my idea, was that I could turn it into a show reel. And then from that, yeah, and then mix that up with some of the audio stuff I did manage to do on BBC London on the radio. And then again, I guess you just try and go to the path of least resistance. So like I managed to get a gig voicing highlights, mainly for football, at ITN. So again, then you're like behind the scenes, but at least, it's associated with TV, but your voice is on it and you're not quite there. And then you just keep kind of offering anytime someone's going out on a shoot, you're like, oh, I'll go with you. And I'm not sure. I think in the end, I sort of, I, I, was last minute replacement for somebody who needed some interviews done for a women's major golf tournament. So I did a lot of that. That was really helpful just in terms of getting comfortable because that wasn't live. And I think in the end, really, the first thing I got a full-time TV job, slightly through massive blagging, but at beIN Sports, I built up a show reel to this point where I could send something over. I edited it all together so it looks like more than I had done. And then that was the real clincher. I did 2 years working for beIN Sports Al Jazeera, and figuring out how it all fitted together. But I was amazingly lucky. I mean, obviously, I had to move to Qatar, which I wouldn't recommend necessarily. But it's a tough and different place to live. But the amazing thing was then it was a real serious, a proper production, and you're learning and working with all the different people um, in the gallery and getting used to dealing with everybody. But yeah, the answer, as you can probably tell, is I don't know. You have to just keep pulling these things all together and showing that you can broadcast. Radio is, there's maybe more space and more time to be filled, so it's potentially better to try and do a bit of that and try and work on that and then do some production work, but always with the intention of trying to be on camera. And the real tough thing as well, Bill, is that people will always be like, "Nah, you're crap. Like this is not going to work." And I think most people get sidelined at an earlier stage and think, "Okay, fine, I'll just do some of this other stuff." But yeah, if you're a sort of crazy egomaniac like me, then you keep thinking, all right, no, I reckon I can make this happen. I've seen people do it. I think I can figure it out. And I did quite a lot of acting when I was younger as well. So I thought maybe in the initial stage, I can pretend that I'm doing it and I know what I'm doing, and then eventually it improves.
Yeah, no, completely. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think a lot of people who work on TV, whether they're actors, like actually paid actors or presenters or whatever, they're show offs in some sort of way. But that only helps, doesn't it? So,
Yeah, for sure. Just thinking that you could do it right and having a bit of sense of presence and performance, I think is
that's
quite
it.
helpful, like understanding about timing.
Yeah, no, completely. So Kate, I mean, obviously being out, Qatar is, obviously, for someone who's, grew up in Northamptonshire and, worked in London, obviously it's completely, obviously different part of the world, obviously geographically, but also, the way of life over there. So what was it like, being out there? You mentioned before how difficult it was.
Yeah, I think I knew before I went out there that it would be tricky in terms of not, leaving all my friends, like you mentioned, being in London. It's such an amazing, multicultural, vibrant place where you can go to watch any kind of sport you want to watch. You can go watch any kind of culture you want to see. You can hang out with people, all hours of the day and night. And I think I probably underestimated how small of a place Doha really is and Qatar really is. And of course, because this is a place that has now hosted the World Cup, like that seems like a strange thing to say, but it's only kind of few million people who live there, and only a very small proportion of those are Qataris, and an even smaller proportion are, people whose first language is English. Not that I only hung out with people from Britain, but um it makes a difference in terms of the kind of relationships you're able to forge with people when you're not speaking to them. I did Arabic is this famously very, very difficult language to learn. So it supposedly takes kind of 8 years to get across it. Um, so I didn't put, I could say hello and various other things. I didn't put lots of effort into trying to lock that down. And then it was just a strange environment because while I was there, yeah, they were building the stadiums for the World Cup, and it's a very, very hot country, as we know. Not all year round, like over Christmas and the New Year, it's like a lovely temperature, and people go on holiday there, and yeah, why not? But in the summer, it's kind of 50 degrees and up, and it is humid, and you basically can't leave the house. And there were people building stadiums in that heat in that country for many, many months, for many years, and it's that kind of disjunct was for me between the kind of super glossy, incredibly wealthy environment that the locals and people like me were kind of living in to the hardship that was also going on. It was just a very stark contrast.
Yeah, no, no, completely. And what was it like in terms of, being sports, I imagine it's got, pretty decent. I don't know the audience figures. I imagine they're pretty decent. And, you're working on that station, for what, a couple of years, was it? Like that must have
Yeah, a
been
couple of years.
that must have been a real education for you in terms of, working on live TV on a consistent basis.
Yeah, exactly. It was. And that was the point of it. And the team was great, and all the people working in the background were fantastic. And I learned a huge amount. And I was getting to present sports shows, a couple of days a week. And I got to present live football as well as things progressed. And I think I actually was thinking I had a sort of like a Premier League highlights show as well for a bit, and you could, because it was quite a little team, but it was reaching quite a lot of people. You could have real opportunities there that I wasn't able to find in the UK. So yeah, I really value the time that I had at beIN Sports and some fantastic people I worked with out there. yeah, it was just not as much fun as London. I mean, that's pretty much one of the major things that you might expect. Yeah.
No, that's not a great. That's not a great surprise to hear that. So we had a question on from social media. So a question from Matt. So thanks, Matt, for your question. He asked, "Have you always been a natural in front of the camera?"
Ha! Oh, Matt. Well, thank you. That implies that you think I am now, so I appreciate that. I don't think it's possible for anybody to be completely natural the first, I don't know, year-ish that they do live broadcasting, just because it's an alien thing to do to try and just be yourself in front of, we talked about those big broadcast cameras and also when there's people around you. It's I don't know if you've seen people standing up to do, say, lives. You know, you see people do stuff for the news, like outside of Houses of Parliament or places like that. It's weird. They're just sort of standing there in the middle of the thing and they're just delivering everything to this camera. And it's obviously not a natural, yeah, speaking publicly is something we kind of learn to do at school, but doing it in that way and kind of focusing all your attention on an inanimate object is like not a natural thing to do. And it's hard not to be self-conscious as well and not to be very like aware of where your hands are and like the weird ticks that you do when you're talking. And that makes it really difficult to be yeah, yourself and if you're not yourself in front of camera, that's the thing I think that people can tell because it's such a magnifier of all your, you know, you're so close, especially on this kind of sports news stuff and broadcasts like this. They're so close. You're seeing your face, like, you know, if you've got one of these big tellies, like you're bigger than life size when you're being beamed into people's rooms. So it's really obvious when you're sort of like uncomfortable or not quite um, talking as you would normally. So I think it's impossible. I can't, I mean, maybe there'll be one or two examples, but I can't think of any examples really of people I've known where people have just been like absolutely natural, you know, the first few times they've been on. So I think it's something that you work at. Um, and over time, you have to just sort of forget the weirdness of what you're doing. And I think that's the key to it. And also, obviously, with experience, you don't stress so much. Like, obviously, things can go wrong, and I do get nervous. Or I don't know, people would say you reframe it as excitement. You know, I do feel things before I go on air still, but I basically know because of my 10 years plus of live broadcasting experience now that anything that could really possibly go wrong, touch words, but anything that I've come across that could go wrong, I know how to manage it as an anchor. So that is a great brings you a great sense of comfort and ease because you're like, okay, no matter what happens, I can handle it, even if it's a complete cluster. So yeah, that's the two bits I would say. Learning to relax and kind of ignore the things that aren't relevant and being comfortable that you can solve it if things arise. And I think that probably takes minimum kind of 1 to 2 years to get to.
Yeah, that's some really good points there. You know, that's brought me on to like what's it actually like working in live TV because I can't even begin to imagine what that's like. Obviously, we mentioned auto cue earlier, which I mean, I suppose you can practice a bit easier now. There's apps and stuff which you
Yeah,
can
I
use.
did do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that,
Yeah.
and then, but the thing that would bug me is, and this question I was going to ask later, but I'm also say it now is, what's actually been spoken to in your ear? Like you told what camera to look at? There's a replay coming up. Is it all that kind of stuff? Because the only example I can really. It's not even a sport one. Is the Apprentice? You know, the BBC show where like
Yeah.
they do the live TV shopping channels on like QVC and
Oh yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
have
Good point.
one part of the team's actually, or yeah, that 1 or 2 presenters actually on live on, you know, showing the products they've bought, and then the others are in the gallery badly talking like talking over each other and all that kind of stuff. So that's the only sort of example. You don't really see a lot of behind the scenes from TV
Yeah.
in that sense, director level too much. So you know that's always fascinated me about how's it all work.
Yeah, you're right. And that is a great example of it. Exactly. And there's lots of different elements that you're having to, I think the key element is knowing what not to listen to. So what people you can choose to some degree how many voices you have in your ear. You can say, oh, I only want to hear from the producer. The producer is the person who, and the director. These are the people who are kind of making the show hang together on air. Or there's something called open talkback where you can hear everybody in the whole gallery. So that could be, 15 10, 15 people who are obviously not all going to be talking at the same time, but they might, just be having a chat. They can't just, especially if you're doing cricket, right? It's a long time to sit in a box. So I think the thing is that it's just a learned habit. There's no real shortcut to it. It's not like, because apparently multitasking isn't really something you can do. So I think what I'm doing when I'm live is my brain now automatically knows which bits I can ignore. And I'm not, because when I first went on air, I remember it's exhausting because you have to very consciously think, okay, like, is this person talking to me? Where am I supposed to be looking? Do I need to go over there? Whereas then it becomes, and I'm very grateful for my time on Sky Sports News for this, because I did hours and hours and hours of live broadcasting there on your own in a two, like in all sorts of different formats on deadline day as well, which is obviously extremely multi-sensory. So, so yeah, I think that you basically learn what is and isn't important for you to listen to, and that's the way that you manage it. And also, you basically never stop talking. So, as in, like, if you're not sure about why someone is saying something to you, or you're not sure if there's a sort of a command that's come into your ear and you couldn't hear it, because a lot of the stuff I've done on site is very noisy. So there's actually a chance that you might not even, in addition to the fact that people are trying to talk to you and you're live on air and you've got to get to a break and you're trying to manage the guests and you might also not be able to hear the information that you're being given. I've also done broadcasts where the whole thing has gone down, and so the only way I've had contact with the gallery and with the live is my floor manager holding up her notepad that says, break in 3, or whatever, which is quite difficult to figure out. And I think I'm quite good at judging timings because of all of the hours that I've spent doing this. But it is quite hard to judge what 3 minutes, like, okay, I'll just ask this guy another 2 questions. That'll probably be all right. And then riff for a bit. So, yeah, I think the kind of organized chaos of it all really does appeal to me. And if you can't really hear what someone is saying to you, or if the command isn't clear, or if for some reason there is crosstalk, which happens, people are talking to each other, they've got different priorities in the gallery, then you just keep talking until someone really, really tells you to really shouts in your ear, because dead air is obviously like a no. Yeah, and you just want to keep it looking as though it's all fun and you know what's going on.
No, completely. Well, I haven't done live TV. But I've done live streams on like YouTube and
Oh
stuff. And
yeah,
just when
yeah,
for watch-alongs and stuff, you just need to keep chatting. If it's the biggest
yeah,
load of waffle, even if you talk
yeah,
about it was a football one, we're talking about music and stuff and films, not even related to sport. We're just like, let's just fill the time. And yeah, completely. I
yeah.
imagine, yeah, that's a big challenge, but I suppose you're used to it by now. You mentioned
Totally.
earlier, Kate, about rejection. So,
Mm.
was that in terms of jobs that you had where you were only there for a short period of time, or I can imagine the amount of jobs you applied for. Like, I imagine you have to build up a lot of resilience doing the work that you do.
Yeah, of course. And like I said, especially in the early days, you get it and you're looking for experience. And if people think you're not quite there yet, you're like, okay, fair enough. I suppose na actually nowadays it's a bit harder because I'm not, I don't want to claim I could instantly go in there and present match of the day, but in terms of the skills that I have, I'm in the kind of top level of expertise in the industry in terms of like number of hours spent presenting live sport. And I've worked really, really hard at it. So it is more difficult now, when I really, really think there's something that I should be doing or could be doing, or have worked really hard for when I don't get it. But again, that's the nature of TV, and people have their ideas of how they want things to be, and I'm not in charge. So I have to just keep um, trying to do the best I can and trying to learn and put the most time into it that I can to get better. And I've been so lucky to have all these chances to be on it. I think, I've got lots of standard kind of like interview rejection stories where I messed up or I thought it was on, and then they called me and said, "Oh, actually no, we've decided to take somebody else." I think the most cringe one, to be honest, I remembered the other day was I went to this interview. I really wanted to get this job. I think it was BBC Jersey, I think. So it's like a local. Sorry, because this was when I was trying to get into a stage where I was working it was broadcasting every day, presenting every day. And it was their like sports job on the island. So would have to move to Jersey, which was fine, not too far. Um, and I think it went okay. Like the interview went pretty well. I had to write a piece for them. I had to do various bits to camera. And then we got to the main bit of the interview, and she did the standard question, which was like, what do you especially like about our coverage of whatever it was? And I, like an idiot, this is years ago now, but I hadn't realized that I didn't have a VPN, and I thought it was like naughty to have one. I didn't realize that from the mainland you could actually watch BBC Jersey. So I just didn't, I'd never figured out that I could just like go onto the website, and I just panicked. I was just like, and in the end, I just said, I didn't realize that I could watch your coverage. I feel like an idiot. And bless her, she said to me afterwards, she was like, yeah, I couldn't hire you after that because like obviously they're judging it with a whole load of points per answer basically, and clearly I got a zero for that one. So that was pretty crushing. But yeah, in general, it's not as clear cut as that. It's not as formal as that. It's mainly just like whispers and stuff, and you're trying to figure out why you didn't get to do something or why you did get to do something. And as the example, people very seldom tell you, clearly why you have or haven't got a job. And actually, I think, or why you haven't got the job that you're really keen for, or think you're really like you've really focused your attention on trying to get. And I think actually that's one of the hardest things about the career.
Yeah, no, no, 100%. Okay, so for a couple of years, you end up leaving, obviously being sports and coming to come back to the UK to work on Sky Sports News, obviously an iconic channel, which is obviously still going strong now. How was it working on there? You mentioned about deadline day earlier, but what was it like, working there at such an institution?
Yeah, it was wicked. There's such, I mean, I've said to you already a number of times, like the teams are obviously that you're working with most of the time are obviously the great bonus to being in sports broadcasting because there's so many people who are just like really excited about what we're getting to do and just quite a lot of people kind of living their dreams. Basically, as I said to you, like the key thing, the reason I was so keen to do the job, apart from obviously it's a massive channel, but just it was like the number of hours you get to broadcast on there because it's sports news rather than presenting a live game. It's just you for 4 hours, just really like in your broadcasting, figuring out how to solve stuff when it goes wrong, figuring out where all the cameras are and what not to listen to and what to listen to. But the team was just so I came in 2019 and that was all, it was just a great first year. But of course, then it was COVID. So we went from having this amazing, bustling newsroom full of people to chat to and to catch up with about that, to feel that you were part of something, to like three people in the building sometimes and remote working and people in the gallery from their home directing the channels. And that was really quite hard because a lot of people were obviously very afraid of what was going on with COVID, very lonely in some cases, people living at home on their own. I remember just before um Christmas, wasn't it? There was a change in the rules about whether you could or couldn't go home for
Oh,
Christmas.
the old
And
the tier system, yeah.
yeah, and I remember but the thing was, people kind of pulled together and, made the most of it. And the bonds there, I think, were really significant. And I just remember, yeah, whenever that was, just before that Christmas, suddenly the rules changed and it was like, right, okay, John has got to get home for Christmas, so we're gonna tear up the rotor. You're gonna do this, like you're gonna pull together. He's got to get out the door. We're getting him a zip car. R.I.P. zip car, by the way. I just heard it's been cancelled in London. Anyway, and we got these guys home for Christmas, and it was just like the biggest buzz, knowing that people were going to be with their family on that day. And on Christmas, I think I did two shifts on Christmas Day, or certainly one on Christmas Day and one on Boxing Day. It's just like that's one of the things I just love about sports broadcasting, that you're just like randomly in people's sitting rooms on really like amazing festive occasions, just hanging out with them and just making jokes about how you're all in there on all in there together on a festive time. And I think I sort of did one link on that particular Christmas Day in reindeer antlers, which I'm not sure was signed off, but it's the kind of people like it when the seams are a bit apart and you can just see the humanity and the humans and the characters behind the really slick product that is Sky Sports News. So those are my favorite bits on it. And of course, Deadline Day. It's just a crazy thing. It's just nice. Like with any of these big sports events, we talked about the Ashes, the Olympics. It's just nice to be a part of a big TV event. It feels like everyone knows. Or, I appreciate not everybody still follows Deadline Day, but people are keen on it. People will talk to you about it. It's a big moment.
Well, I think Jim White is probably still dining. I know he's left now. He's on Talksport, but he's still probably dining out on Deadline Day and the yellow tie and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, great days, honestly.
He de-
Peter Odemwigi. Oh, what a
yeah,
legend! So,
he definitely is Jim White. Jim White is a great man as well, by the way. He's still a good friend now, and he's
oh,
just
great.
a lovely man. Yeah.
So how did the cricket presenting start, Kate? Obviously, you've presented, been the anchor on a number of TNT coverage. India away Test matches and white ball games overseas. So how did that come about? And what's it like working with, an absolute legend like Sir Alastair Cook, and obviously got Stephen Finn, who was a great bowler as well. How did that all come about? And what's it like working with him?
That's enjoyable. That I Finny is a legend to me as well. Um, it was so I was working for TNT already, working on their cycling coverage. I was anchoring this series of cycling events that they own, and I just got that through a screen test, like competing with I don't know 10. Quite a lot of people. It was quite a cool gig to get, and that's been really fun traveling around all over Europe and America, and then from that, in fact, I did this. I worked on the Surrey live stream for a couple of years. So Surrey have well, actually, don't think they still. I don't think it's still presented, but they have like really good live commentary on a lot of the games that, for example, Sky don't take. So a lot of the T20s in the summer and some of the county games. No, all of the county games, but they don't have full TV production across all of it. Yeah, and I went and did that and just had the best time. Like also just getting, as you may have heard from some of the stories from Sky and various other places, like having a community around you is not something you get really that often as a sports presenter, because you're kind of going here and there and you're not always just working with the main team. You quite often are turning up, able to do what they need, providing your wares and going off home. But it was just really cool to be constantly coming back to the Oval to do those games over the course of a couple of summers. And the team there is really, really nice. So yeah, I mentioned that I'd been doing that, and I'd also done a Radio 4 documentary which had featured a fair bit of cricket. That was about how you spot potential. So there's various other things in there as well, but that I was really keen on cricket and that I'd done quite a bit of broadcasting. Also, I mean, Sky Sports News, you had to do like the county cricket roundup, which was an absolute nightmare. So I didn't, that's not one for the show reel because you don't have any information and you can't, you're trying to juggle it all. But yes, I sort of pitched myself to the bosses as the presenter of the coverage, and yeah, got it. Starting with the West Indies white ball series in 23, I think. That was the first. We were doing a kind of fun like Christmas festive Christmas in the run up series. It was all quite chilled and just trying to give it a nice relaxed vibe, and they thought that I was suited to that. So yeah, we did that. And then when the India, very late in the day, if you'll remember, when the India
Yeah, I
test
remember the
series
bidding
was
wars all over the bidding
bloody
wars and
hell.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, what a nightmare. Like it must be real hard work to sort that stuff out. But yeah, when the India series came up and there was some question about whether it would be presented by TNT, I just was very much like, I am absolutely desperate to do this. Wherever it is, Stockholm, as it turned out. Do you know about this? The studio was in Stockholm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, send us to India or wherever. And yeah, and so the first one we did was actually the second test because the rights were arrived so late that they just had a voice. They just had like comment, like it's something you'd see on a world feed, like so something that gets provided to all the broadcasters and then they can pick the voice, use it or not use it. But yeah, it was just there was no studio for the first test, which by the way, if you remember, was the one that we won. So the first test I presented was the second. And yes, it was in Stockholm, which meant I I think my call time was 1:30 in the morning. And so we flew in, me, Finney, Sir Alastair, and not a very big team. So the producer, and I think we had much of the other people were just Sweden-based broadcast professionals. So yeah, it was a very tiny little, oh, and our floor manager, she is British as well, a very tiny little team of this sort of weird like semi-stag do environment of just us in these like weird waking hours. And yeah, my call time is at 1 a.m. and 1 or 1:30, that sort of thing. And of course you arrive and I'm like, right, I'm gonna go to bed at 5 p.m. or whatever. And of course the time is ticking down and I can't sleep because why would you fall asleep at 5 p.m.? Yeah, so I think I got 30 minutes sleep before the first time I presented a test match on national television. And yeah, there's like photos from that, from when we were in the studio but not on air, of me just like sort of really trying to hold it together. And I remember feeling very concerned that my day one performance would be coming to represent, my ability as a broadcaster. So yeah, I just did that. I kept it as clean and, simple and asked short questions and try to just be businesslike for the whole day. And then after that, it got a lot better. And I'd already got to know the guys from some of the work that we'd done before. So that was easy. They're brilliant, brilliant guys. And once of course, I was able to fall asleep at 4 p.m. the following day. So the next day was a lot easier. But I was very worried about doing it on such little sleep. And the benefit, I would say, Bill, is that now anytime I'm doing some big job and I can't sleep or I'm worried about it, I'm like, okay, you presented the first ever day of Test cricket that you presented on 30 minutes sleep. You can absolutely do this. So, yes, to be recommended in the long term.
No, you absolutely can because that series was the first time I'd really seen you on TV. I'd seen you on Sky, but like obviously there's so
Mm.
many presenters and there's so many shifts and stuff. I don't know if you did any night shifts or anything, but like obviously you don't. It's a revolving door. That's the first time I saw you properly because I don't really
Yeah.
watch cycling, if I'm being honest. So like, it's the first time I
Ah,
properly
you're
saw it,
right.
proper saw
You
you.
might
So
get
it's
into
like,
it when you're older.
yeah, and that's and I was like, yeah, like wow, like an absolute pro, like
Oh,
and it's hard
thank
and
you.
it's hard as a non-playing presenter as well because you've had
Yeah.
on Sky you've had David Gower who's absolute legendary player and legendary presenter and Ian Ward now Wardy again he played for England but he's incredible as well as a presenter so to be a non-playing presenter. I think that's a tough gig. So let alone doing it live and stuff. So
Thank you.
all kudos to you. I think it's a shame the Telegraph didn't have the same opinion. Where yeah, I think you know where this is going. So
Yeah.
obviously journalists don't write the headlines. We know that, but the headline was in that coverage, that India series was that TNT Sports needs a Bob Willis or Roy Keane to give its cricket coverage some bite. Broadcasters, affable team, all seem like kind, decent, and fair-minded people, and that is the problem. And you, James Blunt-esque, clap back with the most iconic response, which was, "I'm not. I'm a total prick." Actually, that is just unbelievable. What a response. So is it? You must be used to even when you were playing cricket as a youngster, like the sort of you must be, resilient. But like even so, like I remember an Instagram post you did about a year ago about someone criticizing you on social media. How tough is it to deal with criticism, especially as a woman? Sadly, sexism, as we know, is still not hasn't exactly disappeared.
God, yeah, it depends. To be honest, it's a lot about like how you happen to be feeling about like how your career is going and how you just like feel in yourself, how it makes you feel. I just that Telegraph one just made me laugh. Someone sent it to me, and I just thought it was so funny that you know in your life, when are you going to be told that you're all those nice things that you just read out, and that's the criticism. Be like, that's quite funny. And I sort of know what he was getting at, right? He was basically saying we all kind of look the same and we all talk, we all sound basically the same. We're being a bit bland, and also England weren't playing very well towards the end of that series, and so we should have like laid into them a bit more. Um, so when you kind of get it and you see the point, it's just like quite funny, really. It's also like it's kind of a novelty that people want to write. That it's still like it's a sort of a privilege that people want to write stuff about what you're doing at work, even when it is to tell you that you're fucking useless. Sorry, I started this whole thing thinking I wasn't going to swear, but now am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, well, yeah. It's an adult show, so yeah, you do what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, so I try and see it most of the time as like it's nice that, or not nice, but it's an interesting novelty of the career that I've chosen that people have a view about what I'm doing. And often the stuff that's really unpleasant, which, as you've alluded to, there is unpleasant stuff, is not really about the thing that you're doing. It's not really about the work. It's just like maybe a sexist opinion or just someone judging you just completely about how you look or things like that, or what it is, or your job rather than the actual job you're doing. And I've spoken to, obviously people in the industry, everyone experiences it to a greater or lesser extent. And yeah, there's people figure out ways of advice, dealing with it, not engaging with it. Some people aren't, like Cookie's not on social media. I think he has an Instagram account now, but he's not on Twitter. Um, or maybe someone else runs it, probably. Yeah, and so people deal with it in different ways. Um, the way I found best is basically to just endeavor to ignore it, which sometimes, as I've said, depending on how you're feeling, is harder than others. Like if you feel like work's not going that well, or you're having a bad time at home, it's obviously a lot harder when just strangers shout random crap at you to be like, oh no, I don't mind about it. But mainly, especially as it kind of feels like people are texting you, because you're getting it on your Instagram, like on your phone. But yes, I try and do things like delete the apps, not only go on them on my laptop. That makes it a bit more of a removed thing. And then I basically, like with that sort of joke about being a total prick. Or I mean, you can be the judge of that. I guess we've spent an hour together. I tend to treat myself to once or twice a month. So I ignore everything pretty much, and then once or twice a month, I might just make a joke at someone's expense. Or if there's someone really pissing me off, I might tell them to fuck off. So I basically, it's something I've discussed with like other people who get much more abuse than me. Um, yeah, my friend Musa Kwonga does it. I know he's like a football podcaster
Yeah,
and
he's
various other
great.
things.
Yeah, I've seen
Poet,
yeah,
incredible
his
guy, and
clapbacks
he's
at James
incredible.
Blunt-esque. Yeah,
Yeah, and he deals in politics and all sorts of
yeah,
other stuff
exactly.
that's way more hardcore than places that I go. But yeah, I know he's been a, a thought that that's a good way of doing it in the past. We talked about it. So yes, I think every so often just give it back, and then it feels good, and also people know that if they come at you, they might get hurt, they might get embarrassed, and I think that's it's probably a good thing.
No, no, definitely. It's a healthy attitude to have. Fair play to you. So you've been on a number of different, obviously, shows, iconic shows, Football Ramble, Fighting Talks. You've been on Wisdom Cricket Monthly,
I
amongst
have,
others.
yeah.
Um, so
Bless
you,
them. Yeah.
but you won a bronze award for your audio documentary Inside the Qatar World Cup at the British Sports Journalism Awards a couple of years ago. Well done, fair play to you. Is there something that you'd want to explore? I mean, there's loads of things to explore in the world of cricket. Would you want to? Would something cricket related, doc of some kind interest you in the future?
God, I mean, this is great. We should, yeah, put this together and clip it out and send it to BBC. There's so many different things that fascinate me. It is a challenge, I tell you what, to be because sports presenting, the stuff I'm doing with Cookie and Finney and the guys, that's kind of sports entertainment. And same with, I guess, Ramble is a slightly different thing, but certainly that series was a serious documentary with some like quite serious journalism in it, and that's not treating sport as or football in that case as sports entertainment. It's saying like, what is this doing to us and for us and against us in some cases. So it's actually quite hard to coexist as a sort of serious documentarian alongside the kind of sports entertainment side of things. So it's something I'm thinking about more as my career develops. Like which would I like to do more of? And actually, the guys who make Louis Theroux's documentaries were very helpful when I was doing the Qatar podcasts because they're thoughtful guys, obviously, and they dealt with a lot of those challenges. I mean, in a much more extreme sense than me, they've dealt with those challenges before, so it was cool to be able to bounce ideas off them. In terms of cricket, I mean, we know that there's like lots of challenges with illegal gambling, with spot betting, that some of the places in the world where cricket is played. I don't want to pitch this too carefully, but there's interesting forces behind the scenes, put it like that. Someone I really respect did an amazing documentary, Greg James, or he was like exec producer behind the scenes of the thing about. Oh my God, his name has just slipped my mind, but the dude who turned up to Lord's in a helicopter and you were going to win £1 million.
Oh, Alan Stanford.
Alan Stanford, thank you. So that kind of
He's
story
in
is
prison,
like,
isn't he, for a long time?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he is. Yeah, he's not going to be making any more documentaries. Yes. So that sort of stuff is always fascinating. Like when a huge amount of money comes into the game, but on a less like uh, really hard hitting style of things. I mean, and obviously people be queuing up to do this, but I think I do occupy, as you've said, I'm not a player from any of these. I don't have any allegiances to anybody. I'm outside of the space. I am, strictly speaking, a journalist, so I don't have to kind of, these. I have friends within the broadcast world. Ebony Rainford Brent is one of my great pals, for example, Tash Farron. Um, yeah, and I call Finney and Cookie friends as well, but I don't have to like. I'm not going to offend people like Alex Hartley has found. I'm not going to offend people I used to play cricket with when I'm trying to work on this stuff. It would just be so incredible to find a way of making a documentary about this England men's team and their attitude to kind of personality versus like data and this kind of this question about what is arrogance, what is ego, and what is the like how do you match those things together, like who should you be listening to, and what is the conflict between confidence and making sure you're not missing any of those key little intricacies around sport. Now, of course, everybody who thinks about cricket would like to do that, I'd imagine, but since this is my space to pitch this, I think I would be the best one to make that.
No, absolutely. Well, no one's made it so far, so there's the
Exactly.
space
And because I
there.
think everyone's a bit, it's you saw what happened with and Ben Stokes saying, "Oh, these guys are has-beens," like talking about the culture. Like it's hard if you are any of these guys who've played or have been in the space.
Yeah, no, completely. I think it'd be a fascinating watch or listen if it's audio. So, yeah, no, we'll watch this space, I guess. Um,
Thanks.
so we mentioned the ICEC report earlier. So that was a huge report that the ECB published 3 years ago. Highlighting the discrimination, racism,
Mm.
classism, sexism, or throughout the English or the UK game really. And I read it at the time. I read it again recently. Some of the what people have gone through, international players, both men and women, and club players, volunteers. It's absolutely shocking, but a very vital piece of work. What were your thoughts on it at the time? Because it was well documented, it was publicised, and former England player Zafar Ansari, who's now a lawyer. He was part of the commission that was part of it. But what were your thoughts on it, Kay, at the time? And have you noticed anything changed? Albeit it's only been 3 years ago. Has anything changed since then?
Oh, it is hard to tell, isn't it? Well, I mean, I think the key point about reports like that is that it marks a point at which people have to engage with the issue. Like, even if you can't immediately say, "Oh, here's a whole load of examples of like, you know, that come to mind instantly of like players being treated necessarily immediately better," at least you know that people at the top of the game, people who are managing the game, are going to have to talk about it because there's this report and this is out there and this is the information. So I think in and of itself, it was an important watershed moment. I mean, I don't want to be a dick about it, but I wasn't like, oh gosh, this is so surprising. I'm amazed that these things are happening, really. And I think there's a real challenge at the heart uh, of anything that has the kind of elitist backbone to it. How I guess you maintain what you consider to be the elevated hierarchy of cricket and some of the great history that we see, um, and how we enable people to be a part of it and to not be mistreated just because they weren't, just because they maybe don't have power within the structure of the game. Um, and so, yeah, I was glad the report came out. I mean, I think it gave a bit of grist to some of the work that EBS, for example, has been doing with their ACE program. And I think that is always good. Of course, Azim Rafiq's now got his own pod. Maybe you can have him on. He could tell you all about it. But he's got his own podcast talking about all the challenges that have gone on. But I think, I mean, not to go too deeply political, but you see like Nigel Farage coming out and saying, oh, he's got, I was never directly racist to anybody, but that is the culture that a lot of people were brought up in from who are, that sort of age. And so confronting that head on, I think is pretty important. But then, of course, things move slowly in all sports, and there's a certain sense that it's hard for people who don't suffer from the things that are being mentioned. It's hard for them to see it because if you don't, you know, people I think are a lot more aware, and certainly people in positions of higher of importance within the game. I think there's some really great ones. And I think they have tried hard to be more aware of this stuff, but it is actually hard to empathise with it if you haven't personally experienced it. It's hard to imagine what it might look like. I'm talking about experiencing sexism, but of course, racism is a key, another key one from the report. So yeah, it's a real big. I mean, it's a massive question, and I would love to be more involved in one of the counties. I think to see if I could help in any way to try and certainly open the game out to girls more. But I think one symbol for me of everything that I talked about, and it's a slightly side point, but one thing that I remembered when I was thinking about it was in 2017 when the girls won the World Cup. And it was insane. It was like, it was at Lords, and there was not a dry eye and not an empty seat, except in the members' enclosure where there were empty seats. And I think that kind of tells you all you need to know, really, about priorities and about. Uh, I appreciate that was some years ago now, but I think that signifies how far we still have to go.
Yeah, no, no, completely. I had Paige on from her game two cricket on recently,
Oh,
and
wicked!
the work they do is fantastic. Maybe something with that you could get involved with if you're not already.
Yeah, great idea. I put that on my notes, mate.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
no, no problem. So yeah, they're involved with a number of clubs, and I'm sure they're going to try and you know form a partnership with the ECB and maybe ICC, but they're a volunteer organisation, so it's very difficult for them to put the time in. So they've done great work since I think COVID. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. Um, Okay, so just the final one, Kate. Then, so you mentioned about the 2017 World Cup win, obviously at the home of Cricket Lords, which is an absolutely brilliant final. Obviously, England winning it, and then the growth and popularity of women's cricket worldwide is really sort of it keeps getting bigger and bigger each year. We've had the 100, which is the men's side of things polarizes his opinion, but in the women's game, it's been an absolute revelation. You got the WPL as well. So, what are your thoughts
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
popularity, and it's only going to get bigger?
I think so, yeah. And of course that I remember I was at the first game. I'm pretty sure the first game of the 100 was at the Oval, and it was the double header, and that was a kind of a semi-controversial idea at the time. And I think just doing it and showing, and also not always having them in the same order, like the girls won first and the boys won second, not always saying, all right, the men's one is the pinnacle bit. I thought that was quite important. Um, and I think just like obviously I would say this because I'm in broadcast, but exposure is key, right? Like get it out there. And you mentioned, I mean, we talked about the 2005 Ashes. Of course, I'm aware, having worked for a commercial broadcaster for much of my career, it's a bit hypocritical to be like, it's key to have it out there and for it to be free, but it is helpful at times, and especially when you're trying to grow things. So the BBC has done amazing work on that for the 100 and various other parts of the game. And I think WPL, just like it's wicked also just to see. I know like money sometimes feels a bit silly in the context of sports. There's some of the figures that are being thrown around on these at these auctions, but it does say something when women are going for big figures. And also you see, Sriti Mandana is probably the best example of like just people who are massive on social media. There's millions and millions of followers out there. That has an impact. Um, and obviously, in India, it's key that these players be supported and be championed in the way that they have been. It was a bloody shame that from an England specific perspective, it was a bloody shame. I was presenting the women's Ashes, and obviously it was overnight, so that's always going to have less of an impact. And then we lost 16-0, so it's always gonna, it's such an opportunity when that's getting a bit of coverage to really inspire people. And obviously Australia were pretty inspiring, but it does always take a bit of wind when England are very good. So I'm glad that Charlotte Edwards has taken over. I have big hopes for the England team. Progress isn't yet forthcoming. And of course, there's a whole question raised by the report, as you mentioned, about kind of the pipeline of younger players and who has access to the game. But I actually heard, I went to this Carol concert at Slaws last night, and they were saying that they've got a program where they've managed to get teams. There's teams from 1,200 secondary schools are playing in an event, like a foundation event, like a charity sponsored event, which is apparently a quarter of all of the secondary schools in the country. So if you can get that many people to have access to it, that is the key, really. We know that much of the England team is it's a bunch of public school boys. That's where the game has really been funded and developed. So we've got to get to a point where that's changing and that's opened up more. And I think women's side of the game it's like the really good one. It's not so much. It's not so much beholden to some of the like traditional challenges that the men's game does have. So I think it has so much to give, and I just love to see it.
No, no, completely. And yeah, long may that continue. Absolutely. Great. Well, Kate, thanks so much for your time today. Really do appreciate it. It's been great speaking to you.
You
So
too.
we'll catch up soon. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Follow Kate on her socials if you haven't already. Her socials and website in the description below. We'll see you soon. All the best and bye for now.